Hi there, my name is Susanna Nickel, and I'm an emotional intelligence expert and coach. I founded EQ for Kids because I want to help parents and children better connect in more meaningful ways. I want to empower them with practical tools, strategies, and techniques that they can put into practice so that they can really thrive in their relationships. And today I'm here to present to you our second theme, which is a super important life skill, relationship skill. In fact, I think it's one of the most important emotional intelligence skills to cultivate. So, our title for this month, February, the month of love, is How to Cultivate Connection with the Superpower of Empathy. Many of you watching this video may already feel like you're well acquainted with the term empathy. We use it a lot in our daily lives, but what does it actually mean to empathize with someone? You might have heard empathy described as putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? But what does that really look like and sound like in action? So today we're going to dive deep into this important topic of empathy, how to use it, and how to put it into practice within our relationships. So, as I was researching and preparing this content for you, I came across a lot of conflicting definitions of empathy, different ideologies and theories about what it means. And it's pretty clear to me that even the psychologists and researchers in the field still can't agree on what empathy really is. So, I want to make it simple, easy for you to understand, and give you some tools so that you can really start using it to make your relationships thrive. So, let's start our journey together to learn some more things about empathy, starting from the very beginning. The English term empathy came into being only about a century ago as a translation for the German psychological term Einfühlung. I hope I pronounced that right. Literally meaning feeling in. But over time, we've come to understand that empathy means more like feeling with. But empathy is a lot more than just feeling. It's about connection with others. It's about understanding someone else's perspective. And it's one of the most important emotional intelligence skills that we can learn to develop. Oftentimes, we confuse the two terms empathy with sympathy. So, first, we need to clarify the difference between the two. We're actually going to be covering many different topics about empathy. We're going to learn the three types of empathy, how to put them into action. We're going to learn what empathy is not. We're going to learn my top 3 tips so that you can use empathy in your relationships. So before we jump right in, please grab your free PDF, which is in the description of the video below. It will help you to follow along with me and jot down your notes because you're going to be learning a lot today. So let's get started. Grab your free PDF. There's a big difference between the two terms, empathy and sympathy. As a parent or an educator or anyone working with kids, it's really important to understand that distinction. And I love how Brene Brown puts this. She says that empathy fuels connection, sympathy drives disconnection. So, empathy has nothing to do with how I feel. It's about understanding another person's perspective from their situation and their circumstances. Sympathy, on the other hand, directs the attention towards myself and how I feel. So, more simply put, empathy is about you, sympathy is about me. So, if you've heard that phrase, empathy means to put yourself in someone else's shoes, well, then sympathy is actually borrowing that person's shoes and wearing them as your own. Empathy is all about listening. It tells your child or whoever you're interacting with that you're paying attention to how they feel. You care about how they feel. It's really the ability to reach across the divide between me and you and sit with another person in their pain in their difficult emotions, sending them the message that I understand what you're going through right now. I'm not going to leave you alone with these big, scary feelings. The coolest thing about empathy when it comes to the kids in our lives is that it allows us to be more objective, less emotional, and not take their behavior so personally. When we try to take on someone else's problems as our own, that's sympathy. Then we feel responsible for fixing or taking away their emotions. And we have to keep in mind that it's the other person's problem and we don't need to take away those emotions. We can actually be in a much more a space where we can help them if we come with empathy. So let's see an example of how the difference between empathy and sympathy might play out in a real life situation. So let's talk about how we can choose to respond with empathy over sympathy in a real life situation. I want you to imagine that your child has just come home from school and they're clearly very upset and crying. And when you ask them what happened, they say that they're having a problem with children at school calling them mean names. When I choose to respond with sympathy, it becomes more about me and my feelings of upset, anger, resentment, more than my child's difficulty with the name calling. I then might feel justified to take action in calling the teacher or maybe even offending the child's parent, getting angry and demanding restitution. But if I choose to respond with empathy for my child's problem, I stay detached to a certain extent. Not that I'm detached from my child, I'm just detached from making their problem my own. I might be upset about the situation, of course, but I realize that it's more important to connect with my child and express my understanding and compassion for their emotion. Empathy lets the child know that, this important adult in my life really understands me. They can even name my feelings, so I feel normal and I feel accepted. You might even say something to your child like, oh, it's got to be so hard to hear that name. I can imagine that you feel pretty embarrassed or demoralized right now. It's about your child. It's not about you. Your child might agree with your assumption or they might correct it. Oftentimes, after we empathize, conversation can happen and problem solving skills can start to work on. When we're able to slow down and empathize, knowing that it's your child's problem and you don't take the responsibility on your own to fix it, you're much better equipped to help your child with this problem. Once we connect on an emotional level and they know that he can trust that you know how they feel, you're able to ask more questions, get curious about it. You might even offer some suggestions to help them figure out what they would like to do about it. But the focus here is on helping them handle the problem in the way they think is best, the way that they can. When you sympathize, though, you take responsibility for your child's problem and you're likely to tell him what to do about it. Again, it's about you and your rightness. You might say something like, you need to tell him that you don't like to be talked like that. Ask him how he would feel if he got called that name. Tell him you won't invite him to that party if he's going to treat you like that. It's about you projecting into the situation and telling your child to fix it like you would. So, in other words, when we jump in the hole with our children with sympathy in order to experience their pain, we're actually in our own pain and not in the best situation to help them. We then expect our child to appreciate that sacrifice we've made to jump into the hole with them. But on the other hand, when we can take a step back, slow down, approach with empathy, we acknowledge our child's pain. We're more suited and ready to go off, grab a rope or a ladder. We can give them a tool to help them solve their problem or get out of the hole in their own way. So now that you understand the difference between empathy and sympathy and how it plays out, let's jump right in to learning the three different types of empathy. So, what are the three types of empathy, and how do we put them into action in a real life situation that I'm sure we've all been in before, including me? So, I want you to first imagine this scenario. It's late on a Friday night, you're relaxing after a really hectic week, you're reading your favorite book when your phone suddenly rings. It's a close friend calling in a panic because she's just lost her job. Don't worry about it, you'll find another job soon, you say. Plus, you already knew your company was having financial issues. Didn't you already expect this to happen? Why are you so upset right now? There's a stunned silence on the other end, followed by a dropped call. You did not show any empathy. You thought you were trying to comfort her. So what went wrong here? Without first empathizing with her and listening to her concerns, you may have done more harm than good. Who's been in this situation before? I know I have. We've all been there, and it's okay, but we're going to do better. Okay? Now that we're going to know better, we're going to do better, right? So let's learn about how the three types of empathy could help us apply this skill in our relationships. The first type of empathy is called cognitive, and it comes from a desire to understand. Okay? It's simply knowing how the other person feels and what they might be thinking. It's about our thoughts. It's sometimes even referred to as perspective taking or reasoning about another person's point of view. It's similar to putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to imagine what they're thinking or feeling. So on the phone call, you might have asked questions to try and understand their perspective more. You might have listened and tried to imagine what it would be like to be in their position that they just lost their job. The second type of empathy is about our emotions. It's a desire to feel with the person. It's when you physically feel along with the other person as though their emotions were contagious. And this is pretty cool because it involves our mirror neurons in our brain. We have these neurons that are especially made for when someone else is crying, we cry. Someone else is laughing, we laugh. When we cringe, when someone else stubs their toe, that's our mirror neurons activating. So this is a pretty cool part of empathy, is that we also get the physical sensations in our body that someone else does when they're having a big emotion. The third type of empathy is compassionate, and this comes from a desire to want to help. This type of empathy, we're not only understanding with our thoughts a person's predicament, we're also feeling physically what they're feeling. But with this one, we can be spontaneously moved to help if and when it's needed. So this is more about our action, our behaviors coming from our desire to help. It might be feeling concern for someone who's vulnerable or distressed and then taking action based on that. Now, we don't always have to jump in like we learned about before, but when it's helpful, we can help, especially when it comes to kids, we can help to guide them in their problem solving with this form of empathy. So let's put it all together now. Okay, the balance between our cognitive and emotional empathy allows us to take action without becoming overwhelmed with the feelings or jumping into problem solving. Empathy doesn't really happen naturally for most people because we live in a fast-paced society that doesn't often encourage us to slow down and take a moment to connect with each other. That's why it's a conscious choice and we have to practice. The more we put empathy into action, the more intuitive it will become. I love this quote from Brené Brown. Again, she's the best. That often a response doesn't make anything better. What makes something better is connection. So empathy doesn't really require us to have the same exact experience or go through the same exact things as the person who's sharing their experience with us. It requires us instead to connect with the emotion, not with the event or the circumstance. Empathy happens when we simply listen and we hold space for emotional expression without judging. It's hard to do, but when we emotionally connect, we communicate that incredibly healing message of you're not alone. So now I'd like to talk about what empathy is not. And it's often confused for, especially in the parent child dynamic, is something called codependency. Empathy is not saying, you're making mommy really angry right now, go to your room. Or when you're upset, it makes me upset. This does not encourage empathy, it encourages emotional codependency. Write that word down. Codependency is very different from empathy because in codependency, there's a lack of the authentic self, how we think about ourselves and the way we are in the world. Codependency is a learned behavior that begins in early childhood when there's a lack of boundaries in the family dynamic. So we might have learned as children that in order to receive love, we have to be hyper vigilant to the emotional state of others around us. So let's say that you had a very critical perfectionist mother. In order to receive her love, you had to appear in a certain way, you had to be perfect. And unconsciously, the message that you got as a child is, I'm not worthy to receive love unless I am perfect. In this case, the focus is placed outside of ourselves to get someone's love because as children, love equals survival. And now, as adults, while love and external approval no longer mean survival, it still feels that way for a lot of us. This is because our earliest relationships create our attachment styles. If we've not healed from those attachments, we will carry the same kind of behaviors into our adult relationships, creating an insecure or avoidant attachment style. And at the core of codependency is the inability to regulate our own emotions. So we have to stop confusing codependency with empathy. We have to stop saying things like, your anger is making me angry, or your upset is making me mad. It only leaves children feeling worse, and it doesn't make them empathize better. It makes them feel like something is wrong with the way that they're feeling. This language of codependency, which we often use, leads to disconnection, and it makes your child feel responsible for your emotions, which they can't be. No one is responsible for making other people feel a certain way. We're all responsible for our own happiness. Instead, we can help our children gain independence in self regulation by focusing on moments of co regulation. Write that word down. Co regulation happens when we become our child's calm space in the midst of their chaos. It's a transitional phase in early childhood where children gradually learn to self regulate through the comforting presence and relationship with a calm adult. Children cannot learn to self regulate independently before we co regulate with them. So, how to do this? I have 3 tips for you. Number 1, provide a warm and responsive relationship. So, this means showing up when our child is stressed. You might try using self calming strategies by providing physical and emotional comfort when your child is dysregulated. You can try, humming a calm song, rubbing their back gently, maybe even taking some deep breaths together, or anything else that works for you and your child. Quite literally, you're calming your own nervous system down so that their nervous system can calm down at the same time. When we do this in times of emotional stress, our kids feel safe, they feel soothed, they feel secure and seen. These are the 4 S's of a secure attachment. Number 2, structure the environment in your home so that self-regulation is manageable. This includes providing consistent daily routines and structures and limits on their behavior. So you provide opportunities to practice coping tools through modeling and instruction. You might want to teach or coach age appropriate rules. You might redirect behavior, or using any effective positive behavior management techniques that sets clear and consistent limits on behavior. Number 3, teach and coach self-regulation skills. Intentionally coach and monitor targeted self-regulation skills. So for younger children in particular, it's especially important to emphasize skills like waiting for something, delayed gratification, problem-solving skills with your guidance, being able to label their emotions, and using coping tools and techniques. Now, the key here is that you can really only coach these tools in a moment of calm before the anger and upset take over, so that you're both emotionally present and available. And then when it comes to the time to use it, you already have that tool. You can already refer to that because they've practiced in moments of calm. So do this in small steps at a time. How to build a daily habit of connection. We're on the second page of the PDF now. Today, I have 3 awesome tools to share with you to add to your EQ toolkit so that you can connect every day with your child using the superpower of empathy. Are you ready? Tip number 1, set aside special time together. You can even schedule this into your day, because what could create a greater connection with your child than to let them know that you enjoy spending time with him or her? Spending special quality time together not only builds a strong relationship, it also helps your child's social development, their emotional well-being, and boosts their confidence. Time spent with you helps your child not only feel happier and more relaxed, it also builds their resilience for the teenage years. That's why it's so important to lay the groundwork for connection early on. Make time every day to connect with your child at least 15 minutes. It's really about the quality of time that you spend with them over quantity. So put your phone away, make sure you're not distracted by something else. Just spending quality time with your child, connecting with them in their world. By the way, here's a quick tip from Big Life Journal, one of my favorites, that says that there's 9 most important minutes in your child's day. And they are the 3 minutes after they wake up in the morning, the 3 minutes when they arrive home from school, and the 3 minutes before bedtime. So you might consider scheduling your quality time during these special 9 minutes every day. How to do this? For younger ones, it could look like getting on the floor and playing with them, being in their world for a moment, letting them take the lead. For older children, you might ask them to tell you about a book that they're reading, about how the characters are feeling, or even showing you their favorite video game. And for more ideas on how to spend quality time, I've included family bonding activities on the last page of the free PDF if you sign up to our monthly newsletter. Tip number 2 is a really amazing strategy that you can use called emotion coaching. And emotion coaching is actually the focus of my first session in the emotional intelligence program, which I do through EQ for Kids. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the 5 steps, how they work, and some scripts that you can use today. Okay, so step number 1 starts with awareness. So be aware of your child's feelings in the moment, of your own body language, of your own tone of voice. Understand that emotions are a natural and valuable part of life. So as an emotion coach, you're not going to require your child to amp up their emotional expression for their feelings to be acknowledged. It's almost a preemptive way of connecting. So you can say something like, "You're so mad right now. You're yelling at me to go away. I'll move back a little, but I won't leave you alone with these big, scary feelings. I'm right here, and you're not alone. You can be as mad as you want. When you're ready, I'm right here to hug you." Okay, step number 2 of emotion coaching is to listen and validate their emotions. Give them your full attention, Actively listen and then double check that you've heard them correctly by saying like, is that right? Is that what you're telling me? Reflect back what you hear, okay, without judgment. Oh, Lena wanted to play with your doll and you were worried. You said no and you hit Lena and you both cried. Is that right? Is that what happened? Show your support for their struggle. Okay, so you can say trying a new skill can be really frustrating. Sometimes it's really hard to share and it can take a while to feel calm again. Step number 3, connect. Hey, we've heard that before. View your child's emotions as an opportunity for connection. It's not an inconvenience. It's not a challenge to you. So you can be their emotional mirror, noting aloud what you observe in their body, their tone of voice. Oh, I can see that you're biting your lip like this. You look like you feel worried. What's going on? Oh, your arms are crossed across your chest like this, and your brows are really tight like this. I wonder what's going on. Step number 4, this one's very important, and this is labeling. So after you fully listen to their emotional expression, you can help them gain a wider emotional vocabulary by labeling the emotion and be specific here. So Dr. Dan Siegel says, name it to tame it. I love that. This is the mood meter that I use with the children through my program. So you might say, you're really mad and angry that your brother broke your toy. I understand how you feel. And it's never okay to hit, even when you're really upset. Tell your brother in words how you feel. So you're reminding him of the behavior at the same time that you're connecting with the emotion. Okay, step number 5. And this one we often jump straight into, but it's really important to add steps 1 through 4 before we jump here. And that is problem solving. This step is really important for future change, of course, but it can only be done once everyone is calm. Okay, so you might give alternatives to them. Would you rather play with another toy or practice being patient and taking turns? Resist the urge to jump in and problem solve for them, right? That's sympathy. We learned that before. So you think you might do this next? I wonder what would happen. You got pretty frustrated with Sam not giving you a turn today, and you don't feel like playing with him anymore. But you also really like playing with Sam. What could you say to him next time so that he could hear how you feel? So it's more about asking questions, giving options, not taking away the problem for them. So our third technique that I'm going to teach you today is called connection over correction. I love this. It's a positive parenting technique that you can use when disciplining. Okay, so before you jump in to correct their behavior, you need to connect with their emotion that's underlying their action first. This works because of the structure of a child's brain, the upstairs and downstairs or thinking and feeling part of their brain, which I covered in the last video on resilience. You can check it out in the link below. It shows your child that yes, all feelings are accepted in your home, but all behaviors are not, because they're your responsibility. So let's hear how this might sound in different scenarios. So let's say your child is playing. You might say, you're not allowed to grab things first. Put that toy back. Give it back to your brother. That's correction. Instead, you can connect. You can say, I can tell you really want to play with that toy. It's really cool, isn't it? And we have to ask first. Let's try it again. Okay, another situation when they don't like when you've said no to something. So correction. No, you can't have ice cream before dinner, so stop asking me. Connection first. Maybe you can use the words, I love you. Yeah, I love you. And the answer is still no. During a transition, correction sounds like, I've asked you 5 times to put away your iPad. Do it now or you can't eat dinner. Connection might sound like for a younger one, oh, come here, buddy. Give him a big hug. I see that the iPad still needs to be put away. Do you need help or can you handle it on your own? For older ones, I know how much you want to keep playing iPad. I also know that it's going to still be there after dinner. Would you like to set the table with me? So why does this work, this connection over correction? That connection that you have within your relationship is really the only reason why children would willingly follow your rules. Once a connection is made, children are then open to respectful correction. Kids who feel strongly connected to their parents want to cooperate with them. Of course, they're still going to act like kids, which means that their emotions will sometimes overwhelm their still growing prefrontal cortex. But when they trust that we understand, that we're on their side, they're much more motivated to follow our lead when they can. Researchers say that we need at least 5 positive interactions for every negative interaction to keep a relationship healthy. And since parents spend so much time guiding behavior, correcting, reminding, scolding, criticizing, nagging, yelling, it's really important to make sure that we spend 5 times as much in positive connection. Remember that connection creates a sense of safety, openness, belonging, and significance. Punishment, lecturing, nagging, scolding, blaming, or shaming creates a fight, flight, or freeze response. Brene Brown says, "Rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection." So here's a practical tip to help you apply this connection over correction technique. You can start by tracking the content of your interactions with your child today. So grab a piece of paper. On one side of the paper, write correction. So track every time that you are yelling or scolding or punishing a behavior for your correction interactions. On the other side of the paper, write connection and track how many times you're having a positive connection with your child. After a week, you can compare the 2 columns and the 2 types of interactions that you've had. Remember that this is not to judge yourself or feel bad about your parenting styles. It's simply to help you become more aware of your patterns and balance between the 2. You can tip the scale towards positive connection. I really hope that you enjoyed this content today. I just want to sum it all up. So, some really powerful ways to connect with your child is when you mess up, take a moment to forgive yourself. And then come back to your child and offer them a genuine apology, always seeking to repair that connection. Spend quality time over quantity, at least 15 minutes every day with your child. Show up in the hard times, offering them your calm presence, taking the hard way out, sitting with them in those tough, uncomfortable feelings, letting them know that their emotions are safe with you. Choose to respond with empathy over sympathy. So, in the end, empathy is the ultimate form of love. It's about loving someone in the way that's best for them. True bonding and connection within relationships only happens when we cultivate this important EQ skill of empathy. So keep practicing it. Apply these tools and techniques with your child in your home, even in your classroom if you're a teacher, and let us know how they work for you and the kids in your life. I really hope that you enjoyed this content. If you'd like to see more, please do subscribe to our monthly newsletter where we offer you free tips, tools, and activities to do with your kids, an article that you can read on the EQ topic of the month, and of course this video. So I hope that you enjoyed. Please do take this to heart. Keep cultivating empathy in your life. And reach out to me if you're interested in the Emotional Intelligence Program, which I do with families around the world to help them. I hope to see you again next time on EQ for Kids with me, Susanna, as your guide. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time. Bye.